My wife sat me down and said she had already asked my brother to be her boyfriend, then showed me their color-coded dating schedule. When my wife sat me down for what she called a serious conversation, I expected bad news. I thought maybe something had happened at work, or there was a problem with the house, or she wanted to talk about the way I had been stressed lately. Instead, Erica looked me directly in the eyes and said, "I've already asked your brother to be my boyfriend," and he said yes. For several seconds, I could not make sense of the words. "What do you mean?" he said yes, I asked. She remained perfectly calm, as though she had just informed me that she had changed our internet provider. We had been married for 7 years. My younger brother, Derek, had been living in our guest room for 3 months after his apartment flooded. Now my wife was sitting across from me, calmly explaining that she had invited him into our marriage. "He agrees that this arrangement makes sense for everyone involved," she said. Then she opened her laptop. On the screen was a PowerPoint presentation titled Our New Family Dynamic, complete with a photograph of the three of us from the previous Thanksgiving. "I've thought this through rationally," she continued, "and the benefits are clear." She clicked to the next slide, which contained bullet points about household efficiency, emotional support, and shared expenses. Before I could respond, Derek walked in from the kitchen carrying a cup of tea for Erica. He had not made one for me. "Hey, bro," he said casually. "We need to talk about the new arrangement." He sat beside my wife on the couch, handed her the tea, and took her hand right in front of me. Erica smiled at him before turning back to me. "This is actually better for you too," she said. "Better for me?" I repeated. Somehow, she believed that my wife wanting to date my brother was supposed to benefit me. "You've been stressed with work lately," she explained. "Having Derek help with my needs means there will be less pressure on you." She spoke as though she were offering to take a chore off my schedule. Then she clicked to another slide. It showed a weekly calendar. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday were marked in green for me. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday were marked in purple for Derek. Sunday was labeled Family Day. "This way, everyone gets attention, and no one feels neglected," Erica said proudly. I stared at the color-coded schedule in disbelief. "You made a schedule for dating my brother?" She nodded. "I also created a chore chart and a budget breakdown. Derek will contribute 30% of the household expenses now that he's an official partner." The next slide contained financial projections showing how much money we could supposedly save with 3 incomes. Derek took a sip of tea from my mug in my kitchen while sitting beside my wife. "I already live here," he said, "so nothing really changes. We're just being honest about our feelings now." Then he rested his hand on Erica's knee. "We've been feeling this connection for weeks. Weeks." They had been discussing this and planning it while I went to work every day, believing my marriage was normal. "When did this start?" I asked. Erica tilted her head thoughtfully. "Remember when you went to that conference in Denver? Derek and I really bonded that weekend. That had been 6 weeks earlier. I had been gone for 3 days because my job required me to attend. You slept with my brother while I was at a conference?" I asked. They both laughed as though the question were ridiculous. "We didn't sleep together," Derek said quickly. "We talked about our feelings and realized we were compatible. Erica would never cheat. That's why we're doing this ethically. Ethically." They kept repeating that word as though using it often enough could erase what they had done. Erica reached into a folder and removed a printed document. "I found a polyamory agreement template online," she said. "We only need to sign it to make everything official." The agreement was 20 pages long. It included sections about date nights, emotional expectations, intimate boundaries, household responsibilities, and conflict resolution. Our names had already been typed into the appropriate spaces. Then I noticed the date. It had been prepared 2 weeks earlier. "You already filled in our names. We wanted to be prepared for this conversation," Derek said as he moved even closer to my wife. I asked what had happened to our marriage vows. Erica responded by clicking to a slide filled with statistics. 20% of couples experiment with ethical non-monogamy, she said. "We're being progressive." Derek nodded enthusiastically. "In some cultures, brothers share wives. It's completely natural." He pulled out his phone and showed me that he had already joined online groups for what he called brother husbands. Erica continued to the next slide, which displayed the floor plan of our house. "I'm thinking we convert the garage into a second master suite," she said. "That way, everyone has privacy." She had already contacted contractors and obtained estimates. The renovation would cost $18,000, which happened to be the exact amount we had in savings. "You want to spend our entire savings?" I asked. "Not our entire savings?" Erica corrected me. "We would be investing in a bedroom for my second partner. We need to stop thinking in terms of possession." Derek stood and placed a hand on my shoulder. "I know this is a lot," he said, But we're trying something new and beautiful. We're in love whether you accept it or not. That was when I smiled for the first time. You know what? You're absolutely right. Both of them looked startled by my sudden agreement. Really? Erica asked suspiciously. Really? I said. In fact, why don't we call Dad right now and tell him the good news? Derek's face immediately went pale. Why would we call Dad? I was already taking out my phone. To tell him about your new relationship. I'm sure he'll want to know. Derek lunged forward and grabbed at the phone. We don't need to involve our parents yet. Unfortunately for him, Dad had already answered, and the call was on speaker. Hey, son, Dad said. How's everything? My father had raised both of us, and he knew exactly what Derek was like. Derek had been his favorite when we were children, but that had changed after my brother borrowed money from him 3 separate times and never paid any of it back. Now Derek was standing in my living room, holding my wife's hand, and expecting me to accept everything without consequences. What's going on over there? Dad asked, his voice taking on the tone he used when he knew someone was hiding something. I looked directly at Derek. Dad, I have exciting news about Derek. He has a new girlfriend, and you'll never guess who it is. Derek's eyes widened. He started waving his hands, as though he could physically stop my words from reaching the phone. Wait, Dad, it's not what it sounds like, he said loudly. We plan to tell everyone in our own time. This isn't fair. Erica stepped forward and placed a comforting hand on Derek's shoulder. Mr. Whitfield, this is Erica, she said in the same professional voice she used with difficult clients. I think there has been a misunderstanding about how this situation is being framed. We're exploring modern relationship structures that many healthy couples have adopted. It's actually quite common, and research demonstrates the benefits of expanded family units. The line went silent. 1 second passed, then 2, then 3. After 5 full seconds, Erica's confident smile began to weaken. Derek was gripping her arm so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. When Dad finally spoke, his voice was flat and cold. I had only heard him sound like that a few times in my life. Erica, are you sleeping with my younger son while you're married to my older son? Erica stepped backward as though the question had physically struck her. Sir, that isn't exactly what's happening. We haven't technically done that. There is an emotional connection that developed naturally, and we have future plans involving all 3 of us in a fair and balanced way. I have an entire presentation explaining the structure if you would like to see it. For the first time that night, she was stumbling over her words. Future plans, Dad repeated slowly. You have future plans to be with both of my sons? Erica nodded, even though he could not see her. Yes, sir, within an ethical framework that respects everyone's needs and boundaries. Modern psychology supports these arrangements when they involve open communication and clear expectations. That was when Derek began to cry. He did not shed a few quiet tears. He started sobbing so hard that his shoulders shook. I knew this would happen, he wailed. I knew everyone would react this way. Nobody supports my choices. Nobody wants me to be happy. Everyone just wants to control my life and tell me what I'm allowed to feel. He had been doing that since we were children. No matter what he had done, he found a way to become the victim. When he broke Mom's favorite lamp while playing ball inside the house, it somehow became my fault for not stopping him. When he was caught cheating on a test in high school, he blamed the teacher for making the exam too difficult. Now he was crying about how unfairly everyone treated him while standing in my living room beside my wife. Derek, Dad said, still frighteningly calm. Put your brother on the phone. Take me off speaker. I want to speak to him alone. Derek looked at me with panic in his eyes. Dad, we should discuss this together as a family. Erica says that's the healthy way to handle conversations like this. I ignored him, picked up my phone, and walked into the kitchen. After taking the call off speaker, I closed the door behind me. The kitchen was dark and quiet. I could still hear Derek crying in the living room, but it sounded far away. I'm here, Dad, I said. His voice softened, but it remained serious. Pack a bag. Take enough clothes for a few days and come to my house tonight. Don't argue with them. Don't explain yourself. Get your things and leave. I leaned against the counter and realized my hands were shaking. Dad, I don't even know what to do. They created a PowerPoint. They made a color-coded schedule. They already completed some kind of contract. He made a sound that might have been a laugh if he had not been so angry. Your brother has been pulling schemes his whole life, but this is something else. Come here tonight, and we'll figure out your next steps together. I know a divorce lawyer from my golf club. He helped a friend of mine when his husband tried to take everything. We may need someone like him. Divorce. The word struck me in the chest, but it also felt right. Someone was finally saying aloud what I had been too frightened to think. What about Derek? I asked. What about him? Dad replied sharply. He made his choice. He chose your wife over his own brother. That isn't something you come back from. Pack your bag and get out before they convince you to stay. Erica has a smooth way of talking, and I don't want you listening to another word from her tonight. I nodded even though he could not see me. Okay, Dad. I'll be there in an hour. After hanging up, I remained in the kitchen for a moment and concentrated on breathing. Through the wall, I could hear Erica speaking to Derek in a soft, soothing voice. She was probably telling him that everything would be fine and that I would come around after I had time to process the situation. Process was one of her favorite words. She acted as though my entire life collapsing was simply an idea I needed to consider longer before agreeing that it was reasonable. I was finished processing. I was going to pack a bag, leave the house, and allow someone who genuinely loved me to help me determine what came next. I walked through the living room without looking at either of them and went upstairs to the bedroom I had shared with Erica for 7 years. I had believed we were building a real life together in that room. Now I opened a suitcase and began throwing clothes into it. I packed underwear, socks, my comfortable weekend jeans, a phone charger, and the book I had been trying to finish for months. Footsteps sounded on the stairs, and Erica appeared in the doorway. For the first time since beginning her presentation, she looked worried. What are you doing? She asked. What did your father say? I did not answer. I continued packing. We should talk about this, she said, stepping farther into the room. Running away to your father's house won't solve anything. We need an adult conversation about our feelings and our future. I closed the suitcase and finally looked at her. My lawyer will be in touch. The shock on her face was worth every horrible minute of that night. I carried my suitcase downstairs. Derek was still sitting on the couch with used tissues scattered around him. His eyes were red and swollen. Where are you going? He demanded. We aren't finished talking. I was finished. I walked out the front door, got into my car, and drove toward my father's house. My phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from both of them, but I did not read a single one. During the drive, I kept seeing the schedule Erica had created. Green for me, purple for Derek. She had reduced us to appointments on her calendar, as though 7 years of marriage were merely a time slot she could rearrange whenever she wanted. When I pulled into Dad's driveway and saw the porch light waiting for me, I experienced something I had not felt in hours. I felt safe. Dad was in the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee on the table. He watched me sit across from him and wrap my hands around the warm mug. For a moment, he said nothing. He simply studied me as though he were deciding where to begin. There's something I need to tell you, he finally said. The way he spoke made my stomach turn cold. About a month ago, Derek called me and asked for $5,000. He claimed it was for repairs to his apartment after the flood. He said insurance wasn't paying for everything and that he needed help getting back on his feet. I thought about my brother spending 3 months in my guest room, eating my food and using my belongings while apparently planning to replace me. Did you give it to him? Dad shook his head. I told him I would think about it. Something felt wrong. He kept talking about how stressful it was to stay at your place and how he might need to remain there longer than expected. Now I understand why he wanted the money. He was not planning to repair his apartment. He intended to stay with you permanently. Dad picked up his phone and scrolled through his messages. I need to show you something. I'm sorry because this will hurt, but you need to understand who your brother really is. He turned the phone toward me. There was a long chain of messages between him and Derek, stretching back for months. They were filled with complaints about me. Read them, Dad said quietly. The first message had been sent 4 months earlier, before the flood. Derek claimed I was controlling about the guest bathroom and refused to allow him to keep his belongings there. That was not true. I had only asked him not to leave his toiletries spread across the counter because Erica used the same bathroom. In another message, he described me as cold and distant toward my wife. He said he could tell how unhappy Erica was. She deserves better, he had written. She deserves someone who pays attention to her instead of working all the time. I felt sick. Another message, sent 2 months earlier, said Erica had been confiding in him about our marital problems and that he believed he could make her happier than I ever had. He had written those words directly to our father. He told you all of this, and you didn't warn me? I asked. Dad looked ashamed. I thought he was being dramatic. You know how Derek is. He makes everything about himself. I believed he was jealous and venting. I never imagined he would actually try to take your wife. He scrolled to another message and pointed to the date. It was from 3 months earlier, approximately 1 week before Derek's apartment flooded. In it, Derek claimed my marriage was falling apart and said perhaps that was for the best because Erica needed someone who understood her. I leaned back in the chair as the timeline aligned in my mind. Dad, when exactly did Derek's apartment flood? About 3 months ago, near the middle of the month. Why? 1 week before the flood. Derek had been writing about my failing marriage and how Erica deserved someone better. Then his apartment conveniently flooded, giving him a reason to enter my home and remain there every day while I was at work. Shortly afterward, he began making tea for my wife and bonding with her over their feelings. Do you think he caused the flood deliberately? I asked. The idea sounded insane, but Dad did not laugh. I think your brother saw an opportunity and used it, whether he caused the damage or merely took advantage of it. The timing is too convenient to ignore. He stood and began pacing around the kitchen, something he always did while solving a problem. We need to call your mother. She lives 2 states away, but she always knew how to recognize Derek's schemes. Remember when he convinced his school that you had stolen his science project? I remembered it clearly. I had been 15 and Derek was 12. He copied my project and then accused me of stealing his work. Mom brought both projects to the school and found the place where Derek had tried to erase my name with correction fluid. He had missed part of one letter. Even after the truth was exposed, he cried, claimed he had been misunderstood, and convinced some people to believe his version. It's late, I said, looking at the clock. Mom is probably sleeping. Dad was already dialing. Your mother hasn't stayed awake past 9 in 30 years, but she'll want to know about this. The phone rang twice before she answered. Dan, is everything all right? It's almost 10. Dad placed the call on speaker. The boys are having trouble. Our older son is here with me. Mom was silent briefly. I had a feeling something was wrong. Is it about Derek? Dad and I looked at each other. Why would you think that? I asked. Mom sighed. I pictured her in her living room with reading glasses on her face and a book resting in her lap. Derek called last week and asked some extremely strange questions. He wanted to know about brothers in the Bible. Specifically, he asked whether there were stories in which a man was expected to care for his brother's wife. My mouth fell open. Dad closed his eyes and slowly shook his head. He was asking about levirate marriage, Mom explained. He said it was for a book club discussion, but Derek hasn't read a book since high school. I knew something was happening, but I didn't want to interfere. Apparently, I should have. I leaned closer to the phone. Mom, Derek, and Erica want to have a relationship while she remains married to me. They made a PowerPoint presentation about it. The silence from her end lasted even longer than Dad's had. When she spoke again, her voice had become hard. They made a what? I explained the schedules, charts, contract, renovation plans, and proposed arrangement. I told her Derek had apparently been working on Erica throughout the 3 months he lived with us. Mom made a sound that was part laugh and part disbelief. That sneaky boy. I should have realized what he was doing when he asked about those Bible stories. He was looking for permission. He wanted me to say something he could use to justify himself. Dad told her about the $5,000 Derek had requested for supposed apartment repairs. He explained that we now believe Derek had never planned to move out. Of course he didn't, Mom said. Derek never does anything without a plan. He has been like that since he was 6 and discovered he could receive extra dessert by crying to each parent separately. After a pause, she asked what we needed her to do. Dad looked at me. For the first time since Erica had opened her laptop, I no longer felt completely alone. I don't know yet, I admitted. I only learned about this tonight. Erica and Derek are still at my house, probably deciding how to spin the story. Dad told her about the divorce lawyer. Good, Mom said firmly. Contact him first thing Monday morning. Don't return to that house alone, and don't let them talk you into signing or accepting anything. I told her I was not going back. Dad quietly said, Good boy. Then Mom announced that she was checking flights and could arrive Saturday morning. We'll handle this together as a family, she said. A real family, not whatever twisted arrangement Derek is trying to create. I barely slept in Dad's guest room, but when exhaustion finally overcame me, I slept more deeply than I had in months. Sunlight was already streaming through the curtains when I woke. My phone showed more than 20 messages from Erica and several from Derek. I opened none of them. I silenced the phone and went downstairs, where Dad was sitting at the kitchen table with coffee and his laptop open to a legal website. Morning, son, he said. There's coffee in the pot. I already called the lawyer. He can meet you Monday afternoon. I poured a cup and sat across from him. For the first time, I began to believe I might survive this. Then a car pulled into the driveway. Dad looked toward the window, stood, and checked outside. His entire body stiffened. It's Erica. She has a folder. My heart began pounding, but Dad raised his hand before I could leave my chair. Stay here. Let me handle her. He opened the front door before Erica could knock. I moved close enough to see the porch from the kitchen doorway. She was dressed in a professional blazer and carrying a thick folder. She looked as though she had rehearsed the encounter in a mirror. We need to talk like adults, she began. Your son is overreacting by involving his family in what should remain a private matter between married people. If we sit down and discuss this rationally, I'm sure we can find a solution that works for everyone. Dad crossed his arms and blocked the doorway. You have exactly 2 minutes to explain yourself before I call the police and report you for trespassing. Erica barely reacted. She nodded as though she had anticipated resistance and began removing documents from her folder. I understand that this seems unconventional, but these articles from relationship experts and psychologists demonstrate that polyamory can be a healthy and normal lifestyle choice. Peer-reviewed research shows that people in consensually non-monogamous relationships often report high levels of satisfaction and communication. This isn't something to fear. It is progressive, modern, and practiced successfully by many families. She extended the highlighted papers toward him. Dad accepted them, glanced at the headings for less than a second, and tore the stack directly down the middle. He let the pieces fall at Erica's feet. Her mouth dropped open. Sir, those were peer-reviewed studies from respected journals. If you would educate yourself about modern relationship structures, you would understand that what Derek and I are proposing is supported by established psychological principles. Dad did not move. You have approximately 90 seconds remaining. Something changed in Erica's expression. Her voice lowered as though she were reluctantly revealing a painful secret. I didn't want to say this, but your son has been emotionally distant for years. He works constantly. He's rarely home, and when he is, he's tired and stressed. He has no energy left for me or our relationship. I was lonely. I tried to talk to him, but he shut down. After 7 years of trying, I finally found someone who listens to me and makes me feel valued. Is it my fault that the person happened to be his brother? I never planned for this. Derek was simply present. He understood me and paid attention when your son wouldn't. Dad allowed her to finish without interrupting. Then he said, My son will communicate with you through his lawyer. Leave my property. She stepped back. Can't we at least discuss this? He is throwing away a 7-year marriage over a misunderstanding. We own a house together. We have shared accounts, plans, and history. Dad's voice became colder. The only person who threw away the marriage was you. If you are not off my property in 10 seconds, I will call the police. He closed the door firmly. He did not slam it because, in that moment, Erica was not worth the effort. I went to the front window and watched her stand motionless on the porch. She stared at the closed door, then looked down at the torn articles scattered around her shoes. Slowly, she bent down and gathered the pieces as though the ruined pages still mattered. She carried them to her car and remained in the driver's seat for at least 2 minutes, staring through the windshield before finally driving away. Dad returned to the kitchen and sat opposite me. Are you okay? He asked. I did not know how to answer. She blamed me, I said. My voice sounded smaller than I wanted. She said I was emotionally distant, as though I forced her to go after Derek. Dad shook his head. That is what people like Erica do. They cannot admit they made a terrible choice, so they make it someone else's fault. You could have been a perfect husband, and she still would have invented an excuse. This is not your fault. Erica made a choice, and Derek made a choice. They have to live with those decisions. You do not. You can walk away and build something better. Over the next 2 hours, Erica sent 17 messages. I watched them appear without replying. At first, she sounded reasonable. Then she became apologetic. Eventually, she became angry and accused me of destroying our family over a misunderstanding. Her final message said Derek was packing and leaving because I had made him feel unwelcome in his own brother's home. On Friday night, I sat in Dad's living room, pretending to watch a cooking show while trying not to think about my life collapsing. My phone rang. The caller was neither Erica nor Derek, but a friend from my fantasy football league whom I had known and trusted for years. Are you okay? He asked before I could say hello. I saw Derek's post and wanted to check on you. My stomach tightened. What post? He paused, apparently surprised that I had not seen it. He published a long statement on social media about 20 minutes ago. It's spreading quickly. People are sharing it and commenting. I wanted you to know before you heard from someone else. I thanked him, ended the call, and opened Derek's page. Dad looked up from his crossword when my breathing changed. What is it? I could not answer. I was reading the story my brother had written about me for the entire world. The post contained at least 5 paragraphs and began with a photograph of Derek looking heartbroken, as though he had recently been crying. The caption read, Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the worst. He described moving into my home after his apartment flooded and claimed I had treated him coldly and controlled everything he did. He wrote that I had always been jealous of him, even when we were children, and that I deliberately made him feel unwelcome in his own family. Then he wrote about falling in love with someone unexpected and explained that love did not follow society's rules. He never named Erica, but anyone who knew us would understand whom he meant. In Derek's version, he had done nothing wrong. He merely developed feelings and honestly admitted them. In return, his controlling older brother had thrown him out and turned their parents against him. He claimed he was now homeless because of me and had lost his family over emotions he could not control. He ended the post by writing, "I never intended to hurt anyone. I simply fell in love." Is that truly unforgivable? More than 100 people had already commented, and most supported him. One person said my brother sounded toxic and that a real family would celebrate Derek finding love. Another wrote that love was love, regardless of who was involved, and that I needed to stop being controlling. Someone else suggested I was insecure about my marriage. Almost nobody asked whose wife Derek had fallen in love with, or what role Erica had played. My hands shook as I began typing a response. Before I could finish, Dad sat beside me and gently took the phone away. "Don't do that," he said. "Whatever you are about to post, stop. He's lying about me to everyone. People think I'm the villain." Dad shook his head. "My father once told me never to wrestle a pig in the mud. You both become dirty, and the pig enjoys it. If you respond, you are playing Derek's game. Even if every word you write is true, people will see two brothers fighting and believe the one who cries more convincingly. We both know that is Derek." I asked whether I was simply expected to let him destroy my reputation. Dad removed his own phone from his pocket. "No, you're going to let me handle it. He will remove that post by morning, or I will begin sharing screenshots of my own. We'll see how sympathetic everyone feels after reading what he truly thinks about his brother." He called Derek and placed the phone on speaker. It rang 3 times. When Derek answered, his voice sounded congested from crying. "Daddy, I'm so glad you called. I need to explain what's happening because nobody is listening to my side." Dad interrupted him. "Derek, I saw your post." There was a pause. I needed people to know the truth. Everyone is against me, and I didn't do anything wrong. I fell in love. Is that so terrible? You have until morning to remove it, Dad said. Derek's voice immediately hardened. Why? Because it makes my brother look bad? He's the one who involved you and turned this into a family crisis. I have the right to defend myself. Dad did not raise his voice, which made him sound even more dangerous. Let me explain something. I have every message you have ever sent me saved on this phone. That includes the messages calling your brother a boring workaholic. It includes the messages saying Erica deserved better and that you could make her happier. It also includes your request for $5,000, which we both know you never intended to spend on apartment repairs. The line became silent. If the post remains online tomorrow morning, Dad continued, I will send those messages to your mother, cousins, aunts, uncles, and every other relative currently reading your victim story. They can see what you were saying about your brother before you tried to take his wife. Derek's voice became small. You wouldn't do that. I'm your son too. Dad's reply was immediate. You stopped being my son when you decided to destroy your brother's marriage. You have 12 hours to decide whether the entire family learns who you really are. He ended the call before Derek could answer. By Saturday morning, the post had disappeared, but the damage remained. Several cousins texted to ask what had happened and whether I was all right. One of my aunts called Dad and demanded to know why he was choosing sides. However, when Mom entered Dad's house that afternoon with a carry-on bag and her reading glasses pushed onto her head, I knew exactly whose side she had chosen. She hugged me for a long time without speaking. Then she placed her bag in the hallway, walked directly to the kitchen table, and sat down with the expression she wore whenever serious business needed to be handled. It's time for a family meeting, she said. We need to invite both Derek and Erica. Everyone should have one opportunity to speak. My stomach tightened. Mom noticed. I know what you're thinking, but if we refuse to hear them, they will spend the rest of their lives claiming that we never allowed them to explain. We give them one chance in front of the family. After that, we're finished. Dad reluctantly agreed. I sat there feeling sick while my parents sent the invitations. At 2:45, a car entered the driveway. Dad looked through the window, and his jaw tightened. It's Derek. Through the curtain, I watched my brother climb out of the car. I barely recognized him. He wore a professional outfit as though he were attending a job interview. His hair had been carefully arranged, and he carried a thick folder beneath one arm. He appeared confident and prepared. Mom opened the door. Derek entered with his head held high and did not look at me. He sat in the large armchair opposite the couch, crossed his legs, and placed the folder on his lap. "Thank you for allowing me to explain," he said to our parents, completely ignoring me. "I know this situation has been difficult, but once you understand the research supporting what Erica and I are proposing, you'll see that we haven't done anything wrong." A few minutes later, another car arrived. Erica walked in carrying her laptop bag like an employee attending an important meeting. She nodded to my parents and sat beside Derek on the love seat. "I appreciate everyone being willing to have this discussion," she said. "My original presentation may have been overwhelming, so I prepared additional materials. I believe they will help you understand that this is not a betrayal. It is a legitimate lifestyle, practiced successfully by millions of people around the world." Mom raised one hand. "Before you show us another presentation, Derek should speak first. He was the one who posted accusations online. Let him say what he came to say." Derek nodded, as though he had been waiting for that exact invitation. He stood and faced our parents like a student delivering a practiced speech. "I want to begin by saying I never intended to hurt anyone. I understand how this appears from the outside, but falling in love isn't something a person can control. It happens naturally. What developed between Erica and me was real, pure, and beautiful." He placed one hand against his chest. "The truth is that my brother never appreciated what he had. For years, I watched Erica work desperately to make him happy, and I watched him ignore her. He was always focused on his job. He came home, barely spoke to her, and fell asleep on the couch. I opened my mouth, but Mom gave me a look telling me to wait. Erica is an extraordinary person," Derek continued. "She is intelligent, caring, and gives everything to the people she loves. My brother took her for granted. When I moved in and got to know her, I saw what she was missing. I saw an amazing woman who only wanted someone to appreciate her." His eyes became glossy as he looked at Mom. "Our connection is real. You may not understand it, but what Erica and I share is special. It grew naturally because we spent time together and truly saw each other." He lifted his folder. "There is also real science supporting this. Polyamory is practiced by millions of people. This isn't cheating or betrayal. It is an expanded understanding of love and family. I am only asking this family to evolve its thinking." He sat down and finally looked at me. "I love you, bro. I never wanted to hurt you, but I also love Erica, and I will not apologize for that. The heart wants what it wants." The room became silent. Erica leaned toward her laptop, clearly believing Derek's performance had succeeded. I sat on my parents' couch feeling frightened and small, because my brother had delivered the speech of his life, and for a moment, I wondered whether anyone else could see through him. Then Mom reached into her purse and removed a stack of papers. Derek's gaze immediately shifted toward them, and something changed in his expression. "Before we examine any more articles about polyamory," Mom said calmly, "we need to discuss something else. We need to talk about your apartment flood, Derek." His confident posture stiffened. "What about it?" "My apartment flooded, and I lost everything. That's why I had to move in with my brother. Everyone knows that." Mom nodded. "The flood was real. I contacted your landlord last week. He confirmed that a broken pipe upstairs caused water damage throughout the building." She turned several pages. "However, your renter's insurance paid you $8,000 for your losses. I have a copy of the claim receipt. $8,000 is a substantial amount for someone who later asked his father for $5,000 to make repairs." Derek's face paled, but he kept his voice controlled. "I used the insurance payment to replace my furniture. Everything was destroyed." Mom shook her head. "No, you didn't. I also contacted your friend from college, the woman you have been messaging about this for months. She became extremely helpful after I explained what was happening. She sent me everything." Derek jumped to his feet so quickly that his folder fell from his lap. Articles scattered across the floor. "You had no right to read my private conversations. Whatever she showed you was taken out of context." Mom began reading. "This message was sent 3 months ago, 2 weeks before the flood. You wrote, 'I'm going to move in with my brother for a while. Erica is already paying attention to me when he isn't around. It won't take long to get her hooked.'" The room became completely silent. Erica's confident smile disappeared. She looked at Derek in confusion. "What is she talking about? You told me the flood forced you to move in. You said it was an emergency." Derek raised both hands. "She is twisting my words. I was joking with a friend." Mom continued. "Here is another message from 2 months ago. You wrote, 'Erica is easy to manipulate. She believes I care about her feelings, but but I only tell her what she wants to hear. Once she is hooked, I'll convince her to divorce my brother and keep the house. It's a nice house, and I deserve it more than he does. Erica stood and moved away from Derek. You said I was easy to manipulate? Her voice had changed. It was smaller and unsteady. Derek reached for her arm. Baby, that isn't what I meant. I was venting. You know how people talk privately. We exaggerate. Mom turned another page. This one is my favorite. You sent it 6 weeks ago, immediately after your brother left for his work conference. You wrote, My brother is a boring workaholic. He doesn't deserve someone like Erica. She needs somebody exciting and fun, somebody like me. He works constantly and ignores her. I'm going to give her everything he won't, and then I'm going to take everything he has. Mom lowered the paper and stared directly at him. A boring workaholic. That is what you called your brother while living in his house, eating his food, and planning to take his wife. I sat frozen as Mom exposed my brother's true thoughts. His messages to Dad about my controlling behavior and emotional distance had never been motivated by concern for Erica. He did not love her. He wanted what I had, my wife, my house, and the life I had spent years creating. Erica stared at him as though she were seeing him for the first time. You used me, she whispered. I believed we had something real. I thought you understood me. But this was a game. I was only a way for you to get his house. Derek attempted to laugh, but the sound was too high and obviously false. Come on, Erica. Those messages mean nothing. I was being dramatic with a friend. You know what I feel for you. Our connection is real. I love you. His mask was slipping. He no longer appeared confident. He looked terrified. Dad rose from his chair and approached until he stood directly in front of Derek. He did not shout or raise his voice. He looked at him with an expression I had never seen before, as though he were examining a stranger rather than his son. I'm going to ask one question, Dad said slowly. For once in your life, tell the truth. Did you ever love Erica, or was this always about taking what your brother had? The room was so silent that I could hear the clock ticking. Derek opened his mouth, closed it, and looked from Erica to Mom, then finally at me. Something seemed to break behind his eyes. He could not invent another lie. The evidence was lying in black and white on the table, and everyone had heard what he truly believed. For the first time since the nightmare began, Derek had nothing to say. 5 seconds passed, then 10. Erica made a sound that resembled a laugh but contained no humor. Oh my God, she said quietly. I'm such an idiot. I believed everything you told me. I thought we shared a deep connection. I was prepared to destroy my entire marriage for you. She stared at him with disgust. You convinced me my husband was the problem. You made me believe he didn't appreciate me, but I was only part of a plan to take his house. Derek finally spoke. That isn't fair. I do have feelings for you. Maybe those messages were wrong, but that doesn't mean what we share isn't real. You felt the connection too. Something like that cannot be faked. Erica shook her head. I don't know what was real. Everything you said about my marriage and my husband being distant and cold, did you invent all of it to turn me against him? I looked at my brother, standing in the middle of our parents' living room, in his pressed shirt, with carefully styled hair and his research articles scattered around his shoes. He had spent months planning this. He had tested both of our parents to discover whether they might support him. He had manipulated my wife through false vulnerability, practiced speeches about connection, and positioned himself to replace me. His plan collapsed because Mom had done the one thing he never expected. She had conducted her own research. I stood from the couch, and for the first time in days, my legs felt strong. I looked at Erica, who was staring at the floor with shame and disgust on her face. The divorce papers will be prepared Monday, I said steadily. My lawyer will contact you by the end of the week. She looked at me. For a moment, I thought she might apologize, explain herself, or ask for another chance. Instead, she slowly nodded, as though she understood that she had lost the right to ask me for anything. I turned toward Derek. His mouth was still open, and he looked unable to believe that his plan had truly failed. You have 48 hours to remove your belongings from my house. After that, anything remaining will be placed on the lawn. His expression twisted. You can't do that. Those are my things. I have rights. Dad stepped forward. Actually, he can. It is his house, and you were staying as a guest. You are a guest who is no longer welcome. I suggest you begin packing. Derek searched the room for an ally. He looked at Mom, but she watched him with cold disappointment. He looked at Dad, who still regarded him like a stranger. He looked at Erica, but she refused to meet his eyes. Finally, he looked at me, his older brother, the boring workaholic whose wife he had tried to take, and whose life he had attempted to steal. This isn't fair, he said, his voice shaking. I made one mistake. I fell for the wrong person. You don't get to throw me away as though I'm nothing. I'm still your brother. I thought about every message Mom had read. I remembered the planning, manipulation, and lies. I remember Derek sitting at my kitchen table, drinking tea from my mug, while secretly plotting to take everything I had. You're right, I said. You are my brother, and that makes what you did worse. I trusted you. I opened my home when you needed help, and you used that kindness to destroy my marriage, take my wife, and claim my house. I picked up my keys from the coffee table and walked toward the door. 48 hours, Derek. After that, your belongings go on the lawn, and I never want to see you again. I left my parents' house, climbed into my car, and drove directly home. It was still my house, the home I had worked and paid for, and the place where I would sleep alone that night, for the first time in 7 years.